Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next edition of our How To series, sponsored by McLean and the National Advisory Group. And the National Advisory Group, or NAG, has partnered with McLean through the years on our Young Executives organization, where we focus in on how convenience store companies can groom and identify next generation leaders. And I am very proud to have a keynote speaker, a guest today, Terry McKenna. Terry is someone that I've known personally for way too long, 20 years at least. And yeah, I've known, when I think of leadership and training the next generation, I really do think of Terry and his expertise. He's authored a number of books. He's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, the Harvard Business Review, and a host of industry trade magazines, including 4 books, I believe. Is that correct? 4 books on leadership.
Correct, John.
So, Terry, today I really would like to get your insights on how convenience store companies can identify and grow next generation leaders. It's become a huge issue, as it always has been for convenience stores. But I think we've identified 3 real bullet points. But before we begin and get into all of that, what's your thoughts on leadership and training our next generation leaders?
I'll tell you what, John, leadership is everything. I mean, it really boils down to leadership. And if you're not preparing your organization today for the future, and the future, as you well know, is coming at us at light speed. It's faster, fueled by technology, than we've ever seen. And if companies today wait until the future is at their doorstep, it's too late. They're already irrelevant. They just haven't written their obituary yet. So the time to act is now, in finding out who is the next generation of future leaders for our organization.
Now, as part of Terry's experience, if I did mention, you did also spend almost 20 years at a major oil company at ExxonMobil, and you did you worked in development and implementing service strategy and branding strategies. All requires leadership. And I would imagine that ExxonMobil was one of those companies that did a good job there back in the day, training and grooming next generation leaders.
Yeah, we did, John. I did it both U.S. and I also did it in the Pac Rim region, based out of Singapore. Took care of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Australia, New Zealand. Look, we all had a strategy. A strategy is nothing but a bunch of words on a white piece of paper, but it takes leaders to drive that strategy. That's the critical thing. It's funny. No matter what issue we talk to in any industry, any business, it all comes back to leaders, because they're the ones that drive everything.
And we saw during the pandemic, the companies that really kept opening stores, kept products, the shelves stocked and the stores manned, all led by great leaders.
And we also saw during the pandemic people who were in leadership positions wilt, who did not step forward, and they probably shouldn't have been in a leadership position. And then you saw people who maybe weren't in a quote unquote leadership position emerge and take on a leadership role. It's always during difficult times that leadership is tested the most.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you and I had discussed the 3 bullet points. Do you mind if I just kind of jump into them? The first one being how to identify an up and coming future leader and what to look for. There must be characteristics or tips that current leaders can look for.
Yeah, and what I've got, John, you have to excuse me. I took a lot of notes on this because I didn't want to miss anything to memory. So from time to time, I'm going to be looking down at my notes to make sure for all your subscribers, I got it in. But high potential employees, they start to flash their potential early. There's some early warning signs that you need to pay attention to. So organizational leaders, current leaders, they really need to have their radar screens up. Otherwise, they're going to miss it. I'm going to take you through 3 categories: character, competencies, and mindset, that'll kind of serve as clues on what to look for. So when you see and hear these things, something should go off in their head like that might be a future leader. And as I go through these character, competencies, mindset, I would ask your subscribers, when I'm going through it, I guarantee you, people are going to jump into their head. They're going to think, you know what, that sounds like Amy, that sounds like John. Chances are their instincts are right. No need to overanalyze and rethink it. Whatever their initial reaction is, as I go through this, to those individuals that jump in their head, no doubt that represents some future high potential leaders for their companies. So the first thing is character. Let me take you through 4 things, and character is everything. Number one is integrity. They have to keep their promises. Simple as that. They have to be known for their promises and their commitments. Number two is they got to be truthful. No sugarcoating. They can't be a yes person for their boss. They got to tell it the way it is, like it or not like it. Number three, they're accountable and they hold others accountable. If I could describe one thing that lacks, especially in this industry, is accountability. And the one reason why we don't have accountability is there's no consequence. And consequence is a two-sided coin, positive and negative. And this industry is very, very good at the positive side, but not in the negative side of the consequences. And I understand if we hold people accountable, especially at the store level, they may leave. And I've already got a shortfall in my staffing, but that lack of consequences causing a lot of problems, both short and long term. And the last point on character is they take ownership. You know, leaders own everything. You know, they don't throw anybody under the bus. They're the buck stops here. So integrity, truthfulness, accountable, and taking ownership. Competencies, 9 things to be looking for. They produce results. That's a given. They got to be able to produce results. Number 2, they achieve their goals and objectives. Number 3, they have a strong work ethic. And typically a high performance employee, they could outproduce 3 to 4 average employees. Harvard Business Review did a study years ago, and they said a hypo will outproduce an average employee on a scale of 7 to 1. And they really didn't get into the job position itself. They gave some examples of IT, but the difference, and by the way, your listeners, they're probably thinking, yeah, I got some high potentials, and they do run circles around some of the other folks that just show up. So a very strong work ethic.
Which, if I can, isn't that why consequences has to be part of the equation? If someone's working so hard and producing at a 7 to 1 ratio, and they see a coworker who might be in the same pay scale doing such a lousy job and not being held accountable, that's how really your culture begins to sour, isn't it?
Here's what happens, John. High potential employees will leave because they just don't fit into that culture, or worse yet, they stay. And then your culture just turned them into an average employee. Let me give you an example. Let's just say you're a high potential employee and I'm a sluggo. I just show up every day and I sleepwalk through my job. And unfortunately, we got too many of them in the stores as opposed to the high potentials. But I'm a sluggo and I never clean the restrooms the way they should be cleaned. So then the store manager comes to you, John, the high potential employee, saying, John, can you clean the bathroom? Because when you do it, John, you do a great job. Every time I ask Terry, he screws it up. So now I just punish the high potential employee for doing a good job. And that is frustrating. And that happens all too often.
Okay.
Number 4, they never complain. Number 5, they have higher energy levels. Number 6, they develop their people. And if they don't have people under them to develop them, they influence those people around them. They're just a positive influence to those around. You know, sometimes leadership positions, you can influence people outside of your realm of leadership, but hypos have a strong influence on others, both that work for them and peers. Number 7, they role model the right behaviors for your company culture. And number 8, they recognize and reinforce the right behaviors from others. And number 9, they willingly take on more and greater responsibilities. They're the ones raising their hand saying, John, I could do this. Say, I got that. Give me those responsibilities. So those are the 9 competencies. Mindset. They tend to question everything. They're relentlessly challenging the status quo. These are the folks who are labeled a pain in the butt to upper management. But what they are questioning, management should take seriously because they see the company and the business through a different lens. And today, different is good. In our industry, the vast majority, it's a sea of sameness. There's only a few brands out there that are really unique, really drive in innovation. They're on the leading cutting edge of the change curve. Everybody else is kind of stuck in the middle, or they're the laggards on the end trying to catch up. But these folks, I would embrace them being different and asking these questions because they do see things differently. Here's the phrases they typically say. How come? Why is that? That makes no sense. Wouldn't it be cool if? So if you got people like that, trust me, embrace those questions. I know they're probably a pain, but we're interpreting it the wrong way. And I'm sure, John, as I just went through those 3 areas, character, competencies, and mindset, your NAG organization and those young professionals, that probably describes a lot of those folks that are coming to you every year as well.
And look at the way the industry has changed as we get into tech more, using technology, whether it's on payment systems or on social media, reaching the consumer through loyalty programs. It requires a different mindset than their parents are used to. So this younger generation has been asking those questions. What if we reach them here? What if we did this? What if they're driving and we send them a text message with geofencing? I mean, that's all pretty cool stuff that, it does take, I think, some of these young leaders to instill that energy in these organizations.
Yeah, you're gonna start hiring people who are weird, somebody who sees the world completely different, because so many companies, management, ownership is my age, like a baby boomer, and the world has changed. You got these millennials and Generation Z, and they see things differently. And if we've got Generation Z and millennials, which we all do, we have to embrace how they see this thing, because they just may be the one that gets us through all this change, and we could be relevant for years to come.
And just look at the food service. You really don't have to look past the food service category. For food service, we've done it a certain way. You come in, you order from the touch screen, or you ask the guy behind the counter how to tell him what kind of sandwich you want. It's just not that way anymore. A lot of customers are ordering on mobile apps. They're ordering online, having stuff delivered. It is a different mindset that you need fresh eyes on, and it's a good point.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, we all heard the phrase as we went through the pandemic and we're entering year 3, we hear the phrase new normal. That's very serious. And with new normal comes new rules of engagement. And, if people are thinking, well, this too shall pass and we'll get back to no, there is no normal. This is it. And it's very, very different. So ownership has to embrace that, whether they like it or not. The customers and the employees are in the driver's seat. And that's tough for a lot of folks like myself, boomers, to accept. But the quicker we can face those realities and develop strategies based on that, the better our companies are going to be.
Absolutely. My kids I have 3 teenage daughters. They are growing up ordering food through their mobile app. Everything's on the app. They want something, they go to the app. They have an app. It's just a different mindset. So, you identified what to look for. Now, let's say our listeners, we have people that are going to be tuning in, and they've identified these people that they like. How do you get them into the pipeline? Is that or I'm assuming that's the next step, getting them into the leadership pipeline?
You're right, John. It's a leadership pipeline. And if you could envision a pipeline, I like to use the Keystone pipeline, but unfortunately, I guess I can't use that anymore. But visualize a pipeline. There's a beginning and then there's the end of the pipeline. HR owns the pipeline. They own it. It's completely their responsibility. And the pipeline is nothing but a series of steps and processes that helps develop that young up and coming professional, through the pipeline, piece by piece, step by step. And these are people that, as they go through the pipeline, they're only going to be the high potentials that you've identified to get them in. And you want to have that conversation with them ahead of time to let them know that, hey, listen, you're flashing potential here, and we see a future for you at this company. No promises. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're on our radar screen. You do not want to not have that conversation. And then the young folks, because they have a short fuse, high potentials. They want to know where they stand now. They want to know what their career path looks like. And if no one's having that conversation, they're going to go. And God forbid they go across the street to a competitor, and now they're the top district manager or COO, and you had them first as a cashier. But nobody had that conversation with them. And again, it's not one of those things that it's a guarantee. It's like, hey, no promises, just keep doing what you're doing. You're on our radar. And then we're going to get you into this leadership development pipeline. Through each step of the pipeline, you got to have progress reviews. What are the metrics? How are you reviewing these? Have monthly, how's it going reviews to the individual. And just manage their progress throughout. At some point in the pipeline, they may hit their ceiling. That's it. And if that's the case, get them out of the pipeline and reestablish them. Reassign them into a different position. And that shows that the pipeline is working. If everybody's going through successfully, something's wrong, because it's got to be a rigorous type of process that you take them through. It really cannot be a cakewalk. Try to assign them crucible responsibilities, ideally a P&L responsibility that you could measure, not these cupcake assignments, but something that's got a lot of meat in it that they could say, I put my signature on this. Look how I improved food service sales. Our margins are up. Our shrink is down. All those key things. that we can really gauge them. So it's got to be really hard metrics to really separate the good ones from the not so good ones.
Mhm. Now, one of the things that I've learned through the years is that, and in all the things that you mentioned you could do to keep these young employees, to keep them motivated, you didn't mention give them more money, did you?
No.
So they're not always motivated by, great leaders aren't always motivated by money.
No, and I tell you what, John, you take a look at the cost just to operate. I mean, you look at, EMV over the years, over the past couple of years, you look at insurance, you look at taxes, you look at pressure. There's been more pressure on EBITDA than ever before, pressure on wages. And then you add up that number and you look at your current margin. It's like, geez, where am I going to get this? I don't have the margin to support some of this stuff. Now, from a competitive wage standpoint, we got to be competitive. But I do know this, the answer can't be continue to throw money at this problem. What's important to high potentials is they will go work for somebody making less money if they can see they got a career here. Yeah, it was McKinsey. About a year into the pandemic, said 15 million people left retail, all retail, 15 million, and they're not coming back. And we're seeing that like in the restaurant industry and not just convenience industry. And the prevailing theme in the McKinsey study was, I'm tired of working in a dead end job. So, but it's easy and it's lazy to throw money at the problem. The problem is it doesn't work long term. What we should be doing with compensation is we should be competitive. We should be competitive and provide other types of opportunity.
And leadership growth seems to be a great outlet. All right, so now we have the leadership, we've identified them, we have them in the pipeline. Talk a little bit more about the actual development process. I mean, you've mentioned some things, but it's a lot deeper dive than that, isn't it?
Yeah, you got HR sitting down with the immediate supervisor, and before the individual is about to enter the pipeline, they're going to go through, first of all, is he or she's already qualified, or the supervisor would not be having that conversation with HR. So now they're getting HR involved, who owns the pipeline. Now they're going to sit down and go through the individual candidate's developmental needs. Where are their strengths, where are their weaknesses, and then map it out. And then once you figured out what the developmental needs are, the question is, well, can we take care of that internally? Do we have a training program that could address those needs? If not, try to develop one or go on the outside. I would always encourage companies, develop it within. You've got the talent, you got the potential. You don't always rely on third parties to come in and do things for you. You get a lot of best-in-class employees, put them together, they could develop some things. But if there's something so unique in the individual's developmental needs that you do not have it internally, then go on the outside. The next step is assign a next level mentor. Whatever that leadership, that position that person would be going to next, whether it's a store manager going to a district manager, whether it's a district manager going to training manager or a director of ops, take that next level position they're going to and assign them a mentor. That's going to be a critical part of the process. Also, you may want to consider an outside executive coach. I coach 6 people. I coach 2 store managers now that have been identified as a DM, and I also coach a CFO, and she's the next generation owner. So consider going on the outside as well if you think the individual needs an outside perspective. You kind of open up the lens a little bit more than just what you're getting internally.
Now, before you move on, Terry, could you talk a little bit about what that coaching involves? What do you do in that role?
I get to the individual candidates and I say, you own this coaching thing. I take them through 3 sets of training. Number 1 is optimization of time. There's only 1,440 minutes in a day. When that time is gone, it's gone forever. We can all make more money. We can all buy more stuff. I can't get that time back. And that's probably the number 1 challenge people in the industry have is I need more time to do some of this thing. So the first phase is how do I optimize their time? The second phase is we get into leadership development skills. Then there's leading change. But throughout the process, John, and then there's organizational structure. How should the organization be structured? Span of control, responsibilities, all that kind of stuff. But the whole thing on structure is lean, lean, lean. Speed kills. You have to be fast today. Your processes have to be efficient, highly efficient. If they have no customer, get rid of them. If it's a 6-step process, why can't we make it a 2-step process? Do we even need it? So we take them through that, but then throughout the process is what do you need? So typically when we have our coaching calls on Friday, We start off, I'll say to you, hey, John, what was your week like? Any issues, any challenges? What do you want to talk about? And in many cases, we talk about nothing but their challenges. Now, if they say to me, hey, I'm good, it was a good week, then I have my lessons planned. Then I'll take them through this whole thing. But it's trying to get them into a leadership mindset. But it starts off with time. If I can't optimize their time, it's going to be a challenge.
100%. And it seems, the world is getting so busy. I guess every generation says that, but there is such a demand on leaders' time at retail. There is just so much going on in a convenience store now, whether it's the food service, whether it's dealing with loyalty programs, like we said, new payment systems, labor issues, supply chain shortages, equipment shortages. If you're not budgeting your time, you're just going to get lost.
And John, everything you just said, I'm the DM now. I got to go drive that at the store level. Oh, and by the way, I have a company policy, and I know this for a fact. Every time I get a text, I got to stop and respond to the text. Now, here I am trying to coach you as my store manager, and I say to you, oh, wait a minute, I got to take this text. So what does that say? It says, my phone's more important than you. Well, good luck trying to resurrect that conversation. And then there's also a company policy. Every 2 hours, you got to go in and check email. They are bombarded with distractions from the home office. Now, I know the home office has a job to do, and they want to be able to check off their boxes. But I always say to my clients, where do you make your money? And in most cases, it's in the store, it's retail. Even if they got transportation, wholesale, loose propane, the moneymaker is retail. Well, if it's retail, which it always is, then that's where you got to have your head. That's where that DM's got to be in there driving this, and you got to protect that DM's time so they could do all the things that are important. They don't report to the home office. That's not their boss. Their job is to drive profitability at these stores. And so they got to figure out a balancing act. I'm not throwing the home office under the bus, but a lot of times they say, well, there's one team. No, there's two teams. There's a team in the field, then there's a team in the office. And ownership really got to step back and say, especially the people in the office, they produce no revenue because they got no customer. So in essence, and I've worked in an office, and I was told, quite frankly, from the folks I used to work with in the field for my mobile days, oh, you're now an expense item. You're a drag on the company because you're not producing revenue. And they were right. The only customer they have in the office is the field. You got to support the field and put them in a position to succeed.
So we talked about the development process. Just in your experience, even though everything we just talked about, what are you looking for in a leader? Like, I know we've had these conversations before. You've seen people and instantly said, that guy gets it, that girl, that woman gets it. She's going to be a leader. What triggers that in your mind?
I think it's confidence. They just have an air about them. They tend to carry themselves a little bit different. And I think that's the confidence coming through. At my study group meetings, they know their numbers cold. There's none of this, oh, I got to check in. They know their numbers, and they make data-based decisions based on those numbers. That confidence is they got their arms around things, and they feel very confident. They're also people that know what they don't know, and they have their ego in check to raise their hand and ask a question, whether it's of their boss, a peer, or somebody below them. And the other thing is they're constantly striving to better themselves. I would ask ownership, ask your leaders, what was the last book they read? The answer may be, I haven't read any book because we're really, really busy right now. But I swear somebody would say, well, I read a book or I read a white paper. That's a high potential employee. They just carry themselves different. And I'm sure when I asked your subscribers at the beginning of this, as I was going through this, there was probably some individuals that came to their mind. And I guarantee you, they carry themselves a little bit differently. And it's the confidence. They have supreme confidence in their skills, not cocky or arrogant, but they know they're good. And you want those types of people. Ego is always going to be in check. But John, look, I don't care any professional life. If you want to be great, not good, you want to be great, you need some ego. You need some ego to drive that. Keep it in check. Don't get it out in front of you. It can come back, and in some cases, ego could be the enemy. So you got to keep it in check. But they have supreme confidence.
Absolutely. And, confidence, good leaders are not afraid to essentially be grooming their replacement. They understand what the mission is.
John's a great point, because I made some comments. I said, I would never promote a store manager unless they had the replacement ready to go. I would never promote a district manager unless he or she had a store manager that could replace them. It's incumbent upon leaders today to be developing future leaders, and we should hold them responsible for that. Look, if you're a district manager and you can't control shrink across your stores, or if I'm a store manager and I can't control shrink, I'm probably going to lose my job, as I should, because it's a condition of employment. So why does not developing future leaders get a pass? How come store managers are not developing their young cashiers and the future store managers, and DMs developing their store managers and the DMs, and director of supervisors developing their DMs for the next generation? And that's something I'd be asking if I was the owner. What is my succession planning? And by the way, John, on succession planning and grooming the next generation of leaders, what happens today if your CFO dies? Hey, it happens. We all know friends who passed away at a very early age. Maybe they have a mother that they got to fly out to Arizona, now permanently take care. Things happen. Okay, who's number 2 in command? Same thing for the owner. Who's number 2 in command? I think that's a complete negligence of responsibility you owe it to the families in your company, especially those mission critical positions. Your CFO, your COO, your IT, your HR. If something happens to them, if they go down for whatever reason, they're not here tomorrow, it's going to have a direct and immediate impact, negative impact on the company. So what's the plan to find the next person to replace them? And if you don't have that, at least with HR, get that pipeline going, I'd be worried, and they should be worried.
All of these issues really are the heart and soul of the Young Executives Organization, our YEO group. And these are the issues we get together and talk about. And we've distributed Terry's materials. So Terry, do you want to give your website address there? I'm sure people can benefit from your expertise, your white papers. His website is just loaded with white papers and posts and ideas and tips. I use it all the time as a resource.
No, I appreciate that, John. It's we're kind of going through different types of websites right now, but there's one website. It's God, I got to think of the name. It's www.eps.oe for organizationaleffectiveness.com. But I would say to your subscribers, if they're interested in this, I put together an executive-based brief, and the title of the brief was How to Retain Your Best Employees and Lower the Staggering Cost of Turnover. It's a 15-chapter, 45-page brief, and it focuses on retention, because retention is the best strategy for recruiting. And with this staffing issue, and it is scary, there's a lot of pain out there with this staffing issue, and I don't see it getting better anytime soon. So if any subscribers want a complimentary copy because of our relationship, John, of that brief, they could just email me at terrym@eps-i as in indigo.com, terrym@eps-i.com. And in the subject line, just put educational brief, and I'll just send that thing out to them. It's got 10 action steps, how to move forward to try to improve their retention.
And if you didn't get that, they could also email me and I will put you guys in touch. I can't speak highly enough about the work Terry does, and Terry's sister, Linda McKenna, who has been a keynote speaker for us for years on the Young Executives at the Young Executives Organization. Just a wealth of knowledge. Really, you guys have been training the industry's next generation leaders for 2 decades, and I've had a front row seat, so it's been awesome. I've even learned a few things, so thank you for that.
You know what? That's a sign of a high potential employee. They learn a few things, no matter how long they've been at it.
I'm just not young anymore, unfortunately.
No, I know. We get humbled very quickly when we get old on stuff like that.
Yes, we do. We do. Okay, well, great. I want to thank our guest again, Terry McKenna, and I will we'll include your contact information. But if you need to reach Terry's email again, you want to give it again, Terry?
Yeah, the email address is Terry MTERRYM@EPS, as in Edward Paul Sally -I as in indigo.com.
Thank you. And I would like to shamelessly plug our National Advisory Group Conference. If you look behind me, that is the beautiful Hilton Torrey Pines in La Jolla, California, March 27th through the 30th. We will be discussing a host of leadership issues, and we will have our Young Executives Organization at the conference and a track just for next generation leaders. So for Terry, I'm John Lofstock, editor of C-Store Decisions and the executive director of the National Advisory Group. Thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to having you at our next How To series. Take care, everyone.